right, good try to sell a good book here. Joining us is constitutional law scholar Jonathan Turley, who's also a Fox News contributor. He's got the new book out, Rage and the Republic, the unfinished story of the American Revolution, on shelves now. We're going to do more on radio, Jonathan, but let's just get a beginner here. So why did the U.S. Revolution wind up in the world's oldest democracy? I love this. But the French Revolution, which happened a little bit later, winds up a blood-soaked tyranny known as the Reign of Terror. How did that happen?
Well, Larry, it's great to be with you. And yeah, the first half of the book looks at that question of why these two different trajectories occurred between Philadelphia and Paris, two cities experiencing violence. It actually looks at that through the eyes of one of the two Americans that was involved in both revolutions, Thomas Paine, the other being Lafayette. And Paine was not a supporter of all of the precautions that Madison put in place. Those things actually were the reason why we became the most stable democracy. He went to Paris and wanted more direct democracy, and it damn near came close to killing him. He came within 24 hours of being guillotined. And he learned in Paris that Madison was right. In many ways, Thomas Paine was the righteous rage of the revolution, where Madison was that pious logic, and we needed both of them. Paine knew what it would take to get a people to rebellion, but it was Madison that knew what it would take to get a revolution and turn it into a republic. Now, the thing that concerns me most, Larry, is that we can learn from that. The second half of this book asks, can that American republic survive in the 21st century? And the answer is yes, and we can thrive, even with robotics and AI and global governance. But we're going to need to understand what got us here. And what concerns me is what I call the rise of the new Jacobins, after the people that brought us that reign of terror in France. These are many professors today, pundits that are saying, including the dean of Berkeley, that the Constitution's a failure and we have to discard it. And so on our 250th anniversary, they're trying to eliminate the very elements that made that difference.
Well, that's, that was, a lot of that was the handiwork of James Madison. I mean, look, I knew Madison. He was a Princeton guy. Very smart professor, Jonathan. Very smart professor. That was a joke. But in all honesty, I mean, he was very important because the Constitution is very clear. It's very clear. It stood the test of time. That's what we have. So these other countries don't really have that. And, I know there's controversies around it, but I don't know. I think we're going to survive it, Jonathan. You got to be optimistic. The 250th anniversary, I think you got to be optimistic.
I agree, Larry, and the book is optimistic. One of the things that I really stress in the second half of the book is that we have to preserve what I call a liberty-enhancing economy. This is not just the 250th anniversary of the revolution. It's the 250th anniversary of the release of wealth of nations. And the founders immediately recognized that what Adam Smith was talking about was an economic theory that was perfect for our political theory. Ours was the first Enlightenment revolution. It was the combination of capitalism and that Enlightenment principle that led to the success of this republic.
Right, I love that. I love that. I just love that. Adam Smith. When you come on the radio, let's talk Adam Smith and capitalism. And you're right.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it's terrific stuff. But that has given us a leg up. You're exactly right. Prosperity gives us a leg up. Anyway, Jonathan Turley, thank you ever so much. The book is out on the shelves now, folks.